In Australia, we pay a lot of tax, but most nurses have no idea how much they can claim back. From uniforms to phone bills to APRA registration, there's money sitting there waiting for you to claim it. And in this video, I'm breaking down exactly what nurses can claim on tax and how to maximize their tax refund in a smart and a legal way. For those of you who are new here, my name is Pawan. I'm a registered nurse based in Sydney, Australia. And on this channel, I make videos to help nurses navigate their work, study, and life down under. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Why this matters. Let's face it, nursing is rewarding, but it's not always the highest paying job, especially when you factor in the shift work, the stress, and continuing education that we invest in. But the good news is, Australian Taxation Office allows nurses to claim certain expenses that are directly related to our job. The key is knowing what's deductible and keeping the right records. Now let's talk about the top tax deductions for nurses. Knowing what you can legally claim as a nurse can increase your refund significantly. Let's break this down into the most common categories, and I'll also share some practical examples along the way. First up, we've got uniforms and laundry. If your employer requires you to wear a certain uniform, especially one with the logo, that's totally tax deductible. If you're working as a full-timer, it's usually 1 or 2 uniforms for free every year. But most of the time, that's not enough, because if you're working constantly, sometimes you don't have time to do laundry, so you need some extra uniforms, right? So most of the time, most nurses spend money out of their pocket to buy extra uniforms, and that's totally tax deductible. So basically what you can claim is any branded scrubs or uniforms, any protective gear like non-slip nursing shoes, and most nursing jobs require that, and also any laundering costs for those clothes. I currently work at 2 different nursing jobs, both part-time, and the one at the hospital, they compensate for my laundry already. So I get paid for my laundering costs every time I work there, and it's specifically mentioned in my payslip, which means that I won't be able to claim for my hospital job when it comes to laundry. But for my other job, which is with the Australian Red Cross, I don't get compensated for my laundry. So that's something I can definitely claim when it comes to the tax deductions at the end of the financial year. So make sure that you're aware that whether or not your employer is already compensating you for your laundry. If not, then you can definitely claim that on your tax at the end of the year. So when it comes to your scrubs and your shoes and other parts of your uniform, it's pretty straightforward process how you would claim that. You would just put the amount you spent on those shoes, for example, $250 in your work-related expenses. But when it comes to your laundry, it gets a little bit tricky. So how you can basically claim your laundry is, let's say if you wash your scrubs 3 times a week in a separate load, which means that you don't have your other normal clothing in that load, you can sort of estimate how much electricity, water, and detergent powder you use. But the ATO also has a set rate that you can use for your wash, which is $1 per load. So for example, if you wash your uniform 3 times a week in a separate load, that's $3 a week. And then you can multiply it with 52, and that adds up for the entire financial year. So some people might only wash it twice a week or 4 times a week. It just depends how much you're working basically. So yes, you can just use this set rate which is set by the ATO if you don't want to get into the massive calculations of how much detergent powder I'm using or how much electricity and water is getting used every time you wash your uniforms. And yes, you might think it's only $4 or $3 a week, but it adds up for the entire financial year. So the pro tip here is, first of all, keep all the receipts for all the protective gear that you've bought in the financial year, and also all the additional scrubs and uniforms you've bought with your out-of-pocket expenses, and also get an estimate of how many times a week do you wash your uniforms. And this will help you calculate the amount that you can claim for your laundry and uniforms. Next up, let's talk about work-related equipment and tools. If you've bought items specifically to help you do your job, they're probably deductible. So claimable items in this category would include things like stethoscopes, pen light torches, thermometers, fob watches, or any blood pressure machines and consumables for community-based nursing, and also stuff like professional bags or backpacks that help you carry your work gear can also be claimed. There is one thing that you need to keep in mind when you're claiming work-related expenses. If the item costs less than $300, you can claim the full amount in the same year. But if it's over $300, you'll probably need to claim a depreciation over a few years. So that's something to keep in mind. And the pro tip here is take a photo of all your receipts. I myself, I'm so bad at keeping the hard copy of the receipts. And when I do get a hard copy, I usually take a photo in my Apple Notes, because you can scan documents in Apple Notes now, which is great. And that's also another way to keep your receipts handy when you need them. Now, next up, let's talk about phone and internet use. Most nurses these days use their phone for work-related tasks, be it checking your roster or replying to the messages from your manager, or especially if you're on call, you definitely need your phone then. And the easiest way to claim your phone-related expenses is by keeping a log for 4 weeks. So what you can actually do? Well, keep a log for a 4-week period, showing how often you use your phone for work. Then calculate the percentage and apply it to the phone bill. For example, the 20% of the time I use my phone in a 4-week period is for work-related tasks. And if my monthly bill is $80, then I can claim that 20% at the end of the financial year as my work-related expenses. So that would be about $16. And it all adds up. But the pro tip here is don't overclaim. ATO looks very closely at mobile and internet deductions. Number 4, work-related travel. You can't claim your commute from home to work, but you can claim your travel between workplaces and training venues. So claimable travel would include driving from one hospital to the other during a shift if you work between 2 hospitals, or travel to attend a conference or a professional development event, or visiting patients for community-based nurses. For example, one time, because I've worked with Australian Red Cross, which is based in Sydney, one of the centres in Sydney, and one time they sent me to a regional centre which is in Port Macquarie. So my travel from Sydney to Port Macquarie was covered by work. But if it wasn't, if they didn't pay me for it, I would be able to claim that on my tax. So travel like that is definitely tax deductible, but don't confuse it with your normal travel when you travel from home to work. But keep in mind, if your employer is already compensating you for the travel, then you don't need to claim it on the tax. But if your employer is not compensating you, that's when you would. And how you can do that is, you can claim the kilometers by using the cents per kilometer method. Currently, the rate is like 88 cents per kilometer. So just multiply that with the number of kilometers you travel for work, and that would give you a number. And you can also claim your parking fees and tolls. That does not include any parking fines though. Okay, let's do some calculations here. So for example, if you travel from one workplace to the other and the distance is about 10 kilometers, that's 20 kilometers return. So if you multiply that 20 kilometers into 88 cents per kilometer, you get about $17.60. So that's one trip. But the pro tip here is to use a logbook, because if you're traveling for work all the time, you will need to keep a track of how many kilometers you're traveling. So keeping a travel logbook would be great, with all the dates, the reasons why you were traveling, and how many kilometers were driven. There's actually an app that you can use instead of the tedious old school logbooks. It's called Vehicle Logbook by Driver's Notes. I haven't used it myself, but it's got really good reviews on the App Store. It tracks your work-related kilometers and also creates ATO-compliant logbooks. So if you're someone who travels for work all the time, make sure you check that app out. Next up, let's talk about education, courses, and CPD. Anything you study that's directly related to your current job is deductible, even if you pay for it out of pocket. We all have to do a certain number of CPD hours every year. So most of the nurses do some sort of courses. Some of them are free, some are not. So keep a record of those things. So the stuff you can claim in this category would include your CPD workshops and seminars, online nursing-related courses, example wound care or aged care modules, or any postgraduate studies, as long as it relates to your job and helps you maintain or increase your income. Any subscriptions to nursing journals. For example, I used to be part of College of Emergency Nursing, and they used to run workshops and seminars every now and then, which was really good. But there was a certain amount that I was paying every year as a membership fee. And I made sure that I was claiming that on my tax at the end of the financial year for as long as I was with them. And a lot of nurses also use an app called OSMID, which is quite popular among nurses. And we do a lot of CPD learnings on it. And a part of it is free, but if you have the paid version, that's something you can also claim on your tax. So most of these seminars and workshops and memberships are fully deductible. The pro tip here is keep a CPD tracker with all the receipts and certificates of attendance, and that will help both your taxes and APRA audits. Next up, let's talk about registration and professional membership fees. These are annual costs of doing the job, and they are 100% deductible. Now, this includes your APRA registration, nursing union fee if you're part of the union, and any memberships to professional bodies, like Australian College of Nursing. These are all fully deductible. So for example, we pay $185 every year to renew our nursing registration. That's straight off your taxable income. The pro tip here is these often come as annual charges, so make sure you save the receipt when you receive it. Next up, let's talk about home office expenses. Most nurses do some kind of work at home, be it care planning if you're working in the community or any e-learnings you're doing at home. That all counts. And a lot of nurses now have started working from home as well in many telehealth roles, which requires you to have a home office with a desktop and a laptop. So if your employer didn't provide you all those things or didn't compensate you for getting those things, that are tax deductible. So under this category, you might be able to claim a few things. For example, a portion of your electricity bill, you use the lights, gas, heating and cooling, or the electricity that's being used for the computer to run, and also your internet expenses, because part of your home internet is also being used for work. And thirdly, stationery, and also stuff like desk, chair, monitor as a depreciating asset. It becomes a little bit complicated when you try and calculate all these things because it's based on your home, especially with your internet and your electricity bill. It's really hard to calculate how much is actually being used for your home office versus your personal use. So ATO has actually provided a shortcut method, and they review this method every year. You can use a fixed rate method, which is specified by the ATO, which is about 70 cents per hour. So instead of calculating the actual amount of your expenses, including your internet and electricity, you can use the fixed rate method, but you must have a record of hours worked at home. So for example, if you do some online training 2 hours a week from home, and if you do it for, let's say, 40 weeks, that's 80 hours, which would come out to about $53 or $54. But the pro tip here is choose between the fixed rate method or the actual cost, whichever gives you the bigger refund. Now in the next section, I want to highlight some common mistakes to avoid. Firstly, claiming expenses without records. Secondly, claiming the full cost on the items that are not 100% work-related. Thirdly, not keeping receipts or a diary of your logbooks. And lastly, relying on your tax agent to just know what you can claim. Even legit claims can be denied if you don't actually have a proof. So if you don't have a proof, even if you spent it on the right thing, don't claim it. Now let me give you a quick rundown on how to maximize your tax refund. Well, first of all, keep a digital record of all your receipts. Don't wait until the end of the financial year when you go digging in your receipts. Make it a habit to keep a digital copy of any work-related expenses right then and there when you spend the money. And secondly, track your CPD, travel, and laundry logbooks regularly. Thirdly, lodge early but don't rush. You have until 31st of October before you have any penalties on lodging your tax. So between 1st of July and 31st October, you have enough time. But don't leave it till the last minute either. Just make sure you've got all the info. And lastly, consider having a tax agent. Ideally someone who understands healthcare professionals and what they can claim. So there you go, a quick guide to tax deductions for nurses. A little bit of effort throughout the year can make a big difference to your refund. Let me know in the comment section below, have you claimed any of these before? Or were any of them new to you? And don't forget to share it with your fellow nurses so we can all keep more of our hard-earned money. And by the way, there's also this concept of salary sacrificing or salary packaging that you can set up with your employer, and that will actually reduce your taxable income every year. I've been doing it for so many years and it's helped me save thousands of dollars. And I've actually got another video on my channel where I go through what salary packaging or salary sacrificing is, so make sure you check that one out. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.